Okay, so welcome. I'm Carrie, and this is Coder Girl 2020. This is a preparation for assignment 5, which covers the DOM and forms and HTTP web services, and then also fetch and JSON. And so that assignment will put it all together, but right now, this weekend, we have only covered the DOM. So that's what this focuses on. Next weekend, there will be a part 2, and that will cover all the rest of the stuff and make sure that you've got the basics down for what you need for that. So today, we're going to do this exercise. Ella, you're here, and I want to thank you for the inspiration. Ella showed Clark and me this website the other day that she came across for colors. Just to find, she was working on HTML me something. I should have just said assignment 4, that would have been easier. And was looking for color palettes. And there's this fantastic little website that lets you look at all these beautiful palettes, and you literally can click and copy the code just like that. Now this is, a little more advanced than what we're going to do today because it's got this cool like sliding effect, and you'll notice when you have things that have light and dark, it actually measures the luminance and or luminosity, I guess, and changes it black or white depending. We're not going to mess with that today. In fact, I don't even know how to do that yet. I'd have to learn. So I know it can be done, but yeah, sorry, I just realized there was chat. You guys are chatting. Awesome. Okay, so I will basically show you the idea here. So this is, I'm calling it Inspired Design. It's basically going to generate, I have a list of palettes that I've created, several, that when you click this button, the colors should show up in these squares, and then the codes should also show up just below them. And the name of it will actually show up here. For now, we've got this default text. So it's kind of, bland and boring, but at the moment, but that's on purpose because we're about to make it colorful. So let's see, what do I want to do? Okay, so let's go over to VS Code. I'm going to move this. And I have created, I went to GitHub, I created a repository. I don't have that up here. And then I cloned it down to my computer and I created these files. The README actually came, I created that when I did the GitHub. So, and this just has my usual, little plug for the document, which you guys have all seen. It has all the different exercises. We were just talking about that before we started recording. And then I've set these to be empty on purpose. I have already prepared the HTML and the CSS. When you take this code and you work with it on your own, you are welcome to change the look however you want to, but it's not necessary. I've got it set to where all you can have to focus on this is the DOM in the JS file. So, but I wanted to demonstrate that, that's not what I meant to do. Okay, that as you are creating new content, actually, before I do that, okay, I'm in VS Code. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add the terminal at the bottom. This is a really great, quick way to do your Git commands. And I'm going to look and see what branches we've got. Okay, so I'm on the starter code branch, which is perfect. And I've already pushed that to my repo on GitHub. So I'm going to create a new branch. We're going to say git checkout -b to create a new one. And then we'll call it study session, or let's go with live session. That's more descriptive for me personally. Okay, so now we have created it and we've switched to it. So I could do an initial commit if I want to. Technically, it's not necessarily right at this point, but I will because I made changes. Can't do that yet. Let's go see what's going on. Yeah. So I've got these files because I removed some stuff. It's registering those changes. So we're going to commit that first. So I'm going to say git add. I want all three of them. So I'm going to use a dot there. And now if I check the status, you see all three of them are staged, right? And you guys will get really used to this the more you practice it. So now I'm going to commit, add a message, and say created files. We'll keep it simple. Okay. Now I'm adding my HTML. If I were doing this like from the beginning and a little bit at a time as I'm messing with it, I'd probably do additional commits. But, you know, obviously for now, I'm just going to, now you see we've changed that one. So I'm going to add it. And then I'm going to commit it. Added HTML. Usually they'll be more descriptive than that, but I'm keeping it simple. Okay, likewise with copying from another screen, hang on. With the CSS, I've got that all ready to go. And I've got the starter code for the JavaScript file ready to go. So I'm gonna put those in here. And there's all those color palettes I was telling you about. We'll get to that in a second. So for now, I just want to show you down here in the terminal. I just created two new files, right? What if you have, you're getting a little extra git instruction right now, by the way. Okay, so what if you had added more than you intended to, and you don't want to do it all in one commit? You can hand pick what you want to put in a commit. So I can say git add and then very specifically say, I'm actually going to do styles first. Do that. And then when I do status, you'll see one is staged and one is not. So the one that I want is staged. It's in green. So I'm going to go ahead and commit it. Added style sheet. Okay. Now I can go back and look again, and you can see that I've just got the one. So I'm going to commit it now and created starter code for JS file. All right. So now I have several commits, and I can go ahead and push them up to GitHub. Now, because I've never pushed this branch before, it's brand new and it only exists on my local machine, I'm going to have to specify that it's the path. It's going upstream, it's going to origin, and then I just use the name of the current branch, okay? And when I do that, you'll see that it does all the stuff that it's supposed to do. And then the last thing you see, it says it's set up to track, okay? So there's a remote tracking branch and then the branch you're working in. So we're good to go. We've got everything we need. And I'm gonna minimize this so we can focus on the code. All right, let me make sure I've got a little list of things I want to cover for you guys and make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I think we're ready to go into DOM. Okay, so the document object model basically says, and when I was a student, by the way, I read it and I read it and I read it in the chapter, and I still didn't quite understand conceptually. I'm a very concrete person. And that's actually the point of this, is to make it more concrete. But I still was having trouble understanding, what do they mean that, you know, that DOM is a representation of the page, like, you know, but I understand it better now. So you know what objects are, right? We actually have examples of them right here. That's an object. And I have it purposefully set up in JSON format which means the only difference really, JSON, it never has a name. It's just an object. And the keys have to be in quotes. That's really the only difference between that and a regular like JSON, I'm sorry, JavaScript object, okay? So I went ahead and did that because we're simulating the JSON that you would otherwise go and fetch once you guys learn how to do that. And so I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. If you were to look at the, I mean, if we wanted to make this a little more familiar, you guys are used to seeing them, you know, like this, right? You got an object, you got your keys and your values, right? So I've done that here. It's just for the sake of making things condensed. I put them all in one line, but all right. So we got that. I've got the little plug here. There's that address for that website for the palettes. And we see that the first thing that we need to do, I'm gonna close this, make it simpler, okay. First thing we need to do is establish a variable to track the current palette, because if we're going to sit here and change them around, then we need to keep track of which one we're on. And then we'll be able to reference it once we have set it using a randomizer. So I'm just going to create, I need to reference my notes over here. I'm sorry, too much going on. I have plenty of monitors and somehow there's still never enough. All right. Right, okay, so let's just call it let current palette, and we're going to set it up as an empty object. That didn't quite work, there we go. Name is an empty string, and then the second key is colors, as you see above, and we're going to make that an empty array, okay? And so that way, at the very beginning, it doesn't have anything, and that this is actually going to be useful for us, and you'll see why in a little bit. But that way we have something to start with, but we're going to continually replace it. Every time this button is clicked, a new, one of these will get chosen randomly, and it'll be assigned to this variable, okay? So that gets us started out. We've got something we can work with. So, check, we're done. That to do, I'm going to leave it there though. Actually, I don't need to do that because I have starter code on a separate branch because I was planning ahead. Okay, so I can leave it like that. Fantastic. So add listener to make sure the page elements have completely loaded before the DOM can run. This is covered in your chapter 23. And the idea, it'll become a lot more apparent once you guys do fetch with promises and JSON, which briefly I will explain. Basically, when you use fetch to go get a bunch of JSON that looks like this, the fetch whole method is asynchronous. It's not synchronous. So what that means is it'll go and say, a promise basically says, okay, I've got it, be right back. And it goes and off to work on it. And then, it's going to bring it back, right? But it allows your code to continue without waiting for that to come back. So when you first load the page, you need to make sure all of your actual elements have loaded, for one thing. And unless you had really complicated HTML or a really abysmally slow connection, that's not usually a problem. But then the next thing is, if you're fetching JSON, you have to make sure that it's actually gone and gotten the data you need before you can start manipulating it, right? So I'm just going to copy this over. So we have this, so we started with the window, which is a, built-in object that references basically the viewport that you're in, the tab. And we just do the classic add event listener, and the, basically the command is load, right? So it's basically when the page loads, then we're going to do this function, and this is an anonymous function. So it's all built right in here with the listener. And we're just going to say page loaded and put that in the console. If we were fetching JSON, we would put that right here. And then we would call this function to run everything inside that, so that while we're fetching the JSON, it does not move on down here and grab it. So for now, we have to put this down here because we're not fetching JSON. We've got everything we need right there, okay? But if we were, just so you know, to think ahead, and maybe that'll help you when you're studying the fetch stuff. That's something that when I did my capstone project was a real beast. We had a ton of JSON that we were from our back end to our front end, and other stuff that we were going and getting. And it took us a while to figure out that it really matters how you sequence everything, and you have to put things inside the fetch statements in order to make sure they don't run until it's actually gone and gotten the data. So we'll talk more about that next weekend. So now we got it. So basically we load the window, we make sure it's loaded, we've got our data, and then we call this function. So right now, if I did not have this, if I come over here and run this, you know, hang on, it will help if we have our developer tools, because yeah. So you can see the page loaded, it said data loaded. This is all coming right here from these log statements. So you know we've gotten that far. And once we have stuff down here, actually that'll be more useful, and I can show you that it either works or doesn't work. So let's go ahead and move down to here. So the first thing we need to do is code all of the objects. So this is the important part, right? Where the purpose of the DOM structure is to actually assign, basically take elements on your HTML document and make them objects that have properties that you can then work with. So the first one we need is, let's do the header. So we've got this header, and if we go over here, I want to show you what I'm referencing, right? So I've assigned header an ID. That's what's going to allow us to reference it. And you can see a lot of these things have IDs, and some of them have IDs for the purposes of just CSS styling. But if you're going to make a model in your JavaScript file, they absolutely have to have an ID, and that's what you use. So we'll go over here, and we want to make sure we can grab that. You know what? That's okay. We'll go ahead and do it. All right. So we're going to go to the document, which the document is this document. And the reason that it knows that is because we have assigned this file to this document. So yeah, it goes, and we're going to use the get element by ID. And we're going to make this, we'll just call it header because, you know, oh no, I'm sorry. We're calling it header. This is the ID on the page. Yeah, sorry, said that backwards. Okay. I'm going to skip that one for now. Let's go to the button. The button is the most important one here because it controls pretty much everything. Everything we do is going to be based off of that. So same thing, document, get element by ID. And then what did we call our button? We have to go look. I called the button get colors. So we're going to call it, or make sure we reference it as get colors. All right. Now we need a way to reference this part right here, because one of the things that our instructions said was to make sure that the name of the palette changes and displays for you. And that refers to these names up here, the silly names I've given them for each color scheme. So we want to make sure we have a way to reference that text right there. So same thing. Let palette name equal document .id, and we called it palette name. Okay, so now we have a way to reference that. And then the last things are these color blocks, right? There's 5 of them, and something you can't see, but I will show you using the inspector. There's also these divs right here that contain the empty spots where those color codes are going to go. If you look at the HTML right now, you'll see that, here, that's what these are down here. They're pop up. Okay. You'll see right here that there's this, these P tags, right? And there's nothing in between them. There's no inner HTML. And that's on purpose because we want the default to basically just be blank. But because this has an ID we can work with, we'll be able to assign values to it. Same thing here. We've got, in this case, the div is the thing because all we're doing is creating a little box and we're using the background color to give it, the image. So it's pretty straightforward. And so it has to have an ID of its own that's unique. And these classes have more to do with the, setting the margins and all that. That's CSS styling. So that's how everything is structured. And that's why it's there, but you don't see anything right now. But we'll refer to those. And so the next thing you may be thinking is, well, why do we have to do everything 5 times? Color 0, color 1, color 2. Well, JavaScript's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And there's actually a way to make use of that. So we are going to set up a couple of empty arrays. And this one is going to store all 5 of the div elements for those color blocks. And then we're going to have another one that's color codes. There we go. And make sure I don't mess up what I have everything else set to. Okay. And that's to store all 5 P elements. Now, I'm putting that on purpose because I want to make sure that you guys, it's solidified for you that these objects that are being set up refer to HTML elements, okay? We reference them by their ID names, but ultimately that is what they are connecting to. So we're going to do a loop. How about that? Loops are so handy. And this is set 5. It's not going to change. I don't need to change it. So I'm going to hard code that 5. There are always going to be 5 colors, 5 boxes. Okay. So in order to go grab all 5 of those and put them in those arrays, we're going to go get them. What do I need to put? Can anyone guess what I'm going to do here in order to reference the specific ID that I want for one of those 5 boxes? Anybody have any ideas?
Would it be one of the color block IDs, or is it already at the part where it's randomly selected? I'm not sure.
So it's going to be one of these 5.
One of those 5. Okay.
Yeah. So I need to reference all 5 of these. So how would I do that to tell it which one to find? No ideas? Okay. So we're going to use simple concatenation. We're going to start with color, right? And then we're just going to concatenate with the index because our index is 0 to 4. So that's why I named them that way, so that they would line up directly with the index. And JavaScript allows you to do concatenation with a variable like this, and it automatically makes it a string instead of a number. Whenever you concatenate it with other text, it'll do that for you. Not all languages do, but JavaScript does. So that will go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to go look for color 0 because we're on index 0. And I'm going to push that as into the index 0 for this new array. So once we cycle through and do that, this new array is going to contain all 5 of those, color 0, color 1. And so you have a set location now, something that's tied to those specific elements individually, but it lines up directly with our 5 colors so that we can actually make use of that later when we need to set all 5 of these equal to update this color blocks so it knows which colors to be displaying at that particular moment. Okay, and then no need to make a new loop. We can do the same thing with color codes. LOD, and in this case, we're going to say code plus I. And that way it'll create those code 0 through 4 that we need right there. It'll go and find all 5 of them, and now each of them have a spot in this array in the same order as we're expecting each of these colors to have the codes displayed in these divs down here. So that I think is all we want for now. I might add another one here. We'll call it bonus. And so now we can move on to our functions and our listeners. And I'm going to drink some water. My voice is getting scratchy. Okay. So basically, let's see. The first one we're going to do is going to be set up as a separate function. And in JavaScript, you can declare new functions inside of functions. It's very handy. And so we're going to do that. We're just going to go and establish a function. And we're going to call it change palette. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Doesn't need anything passed into it. And okay, first thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to, go get a color. And so we need a randomizer, right? So I'm going to establish an index for that, so we always know how to refer to it for this particular iteration. And okay, let's write this first. So basically, we'll say that the random index is going to be equal to, there's a reason why I'm doing this separately, and you'll see in a second. Math.floor, math.random, gosh, should have copied and pasted this one, y'all. Palettes dot length, and that's referring, of course, up here to this whole array right here of all these objects. And what's nice, as you have learned about using the length property and not hard coding something, is I can remove, some of these objects. I can add more. I mean, what if you were to get the JSON and the data was doubled, right? You come back, well, your code can handle it because it goes and it checks the length every single time. So it's just going to go and pick, this is going to calculate an index that is one of these from 0 to, n-1 for that. So we've got our random index established, and now we can go and assign. So we remember up here, we had established this current palette as an empty object. Now we are going to overwrite it, and we're going to choose palettes and at random index. So if we were to go ahead and just console log that real quick so we can make sure that it's actually working, we could do that. And by the way, I have VS Code set to autosave, so that's why I'm not sitting here, command-S-ing constantly, or Control-S-ing if you're a Windows person. Okay, I'll take this off. Let's refresh this. And now, oh. Interesting.
Angela said that your math random is missing a period.
Yeah, on line 66. I didn't want to interrupt.
No, absolutely. No, catch my mistakes because, you know, this happens constantly, right? You guys know this as you're coding, you make little mistakes and it messes up your code and you can spend forever, you know, looking for it. Absolutely interrupt me and let me know. I am all for it. More eyes are better. Okay, well, let's try that. That may have been it. No, and the reason that's not working, haha, is because we haven't actually set up anything for the button yet, right? So in order to do that, we're going to need an event listener. And this is an example of where you can just reference the separate function. And I've got it, you know, just like that. And when you're working in the DOM, you don't need to have the parentheses for a function, like for the arguments, you just use the name of it. And that, I know, generally that can be confusing if you have functions that are named something really similarly as a variable somewhere. But in here, it's pretty straightforward. So just remember that. So if you have that, instead of using an anonymous function, this one's going to be long enough that to me, it was worth it to go ahead and establish it separately. The other reason you might consider doing that is, as you have learned, sometimes you want to reuse a function, right? You want to be able to reference it in several different places at once. So if I had this whole function built just into this event listener, then it wouldn't be accessible to anything else. Now for this page, you actually don't need it to be accessible to anything else, but I just wanted to show you what that looks like. Okay, so that's the event listener. So now that the button is listening for the click and then it knows to run this, let's go try it again. All right. Yeah, okay, so nothing actually happened yet, right? Because we haven't told it what to do. But we can see that we actually did get that console log of the object. Now, right here, it says colors array 5. In this particular, I'm in Chrome. This particular DevTools, I can actually open that up and then you actually see what the contents of that array are. It's a nice little feature. It's lots of different ways. It gets real crazy, by the way. You can come down here and look at all this. It's insane. All of the data associated with that object. Okay. Moving along. Let's go down here. So we need to add some more functionality to this, obviously. And I'll comment that out for now. Let's see, which part do I want to, let's do this. What happens if you want a color to, you want to make sure that, sorry, word this, to validate things so that if they press the button and the randomizer chooses the same one that they already are on, that, you know, then nothing happens, right? But we could put a validator in here that actually would take care of that and say, okay, first check and see if it's the one that's already current. And if it is, go get it again, you know, go get a different one. And that way it would make sure that it always changes something new. So we can do that. And to do that, we're going to do a special kind of while loop called a do while loop. And do while loops are set up like this. Basically, oops, don't need that. You have something, the difference is with a while loop, it only executes if the conditions in here are true, right? But in this case, we need, especially this very, very first time, because there is nothing there. We need to make sure it does it at least once. So we're going to go and say do so that it executes once, and then we'll move this stuff inside. And my indents are not playing nice. And we could, we want our condition to be what? So we want to go and check what the palette name, I don't think we've set that up yet, have we? Hang on. Yeah. Okay, so up here we see, you see we established this object palette name, and it refers to, you know, this right here. So the simplest way to do it is to just go and say, okay, what is that currently displaying? And if the palette name, and of course that means we access the inner HTML property of that object, and we're going to compare it against the current palette name, if I can spell, and then the name property of whatever, you know, color palette object is currently saved right here. Okay, and if those are still equal because it chose the one that's already there, it'll go back and it'll execute this again. Otherwise, it moves on. Okay. And I am going to just copy and paste this. There's a little console log statement now that I've used a template literal, and I'm going and I'm getting, okay, once this is done and I know that it's a new one, we're going to log what that new one is. So let's go try that and see what happens. Let's bring on the colors. Color palette is now poolside. Now that's all well and good, but we haven't actually modified anything else. So you're not seeing the color palette, but we're getting there. We're getting there one thing at a time, right? Okay. So I'm just going to take this out now that we have that. All right. So next on our list is to modify everything else on the page. So that palette name we talked about right here, we have our default text that was actually in our HTML file. We're about to change it. So we're going to say palette name dot inner HTML is equal to the current palette dot name. So we want to just go find whatever just got chosen, this current palette. We're going to go get that, and we're going to grab that name and make it what's on this page. So now that I've done that, let's go check and make sure that's happening. Yeah, color palette is now disco. We see disco, right? Okay, so we got one object down. Now what else do we want to change? We want to get to those blocks, right? So let's get the color blocks, because that's where it gets fun. Now here again, we have 5 blocks, and in our current palette colors property, we have 5 hex codes, right? So in order to line those up, we are again going to take advantage of the loop, the for loop. And there again, hard code to 5, because that's not ever going to change. And oh, come on. All right. So we need to go reference the first block, right? And we know we stored them in this array right here, right? So we're going to go reference that array, but we want to look specifically at the one, excuse me, at the one that's at index I. And we're going to go and say we want to reference its style and its background color. Now, as you probably have already learned, when you have a property, like style property like this, in CSS, you'll see it done hyphenated, right? Background color, all lowercase. And when, wrong one. When you have the DOM and you're referencing these properties of these objects, you just put it in camel case instead. Take the hyphen out, make it camel case, okay? That's pretty standard. And then we're going to set that to the current palette.colors. Again, this is an array. Colors is an array, so we need to set it equal to the same index. So that's going to make it where each time it goes through, it's going to say, okay, this block now gets the, color 1, or color 0. This gets color 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? All from whichever one it's chosen right here. So let's test that out and see what happens. All right, check it out. We've got color. All right, so full side. And doesn't that just make you want to go grab a towel and, head to the nearest pool, right? If it weren't so chilly outside. Okay, so yeah, and we can do it again. And our randomizer is working, as you can see, it's doing new stuff. Over here, it's updating us and telling us we've got new ones. We see the name here, we see the colors. And they're not perfect squares because I squished this thing over, but there you go. And I could fix that if I wanted to with my CSS, but not worried about that right here at the moment. Yeah, so we can keep doing this. So we've got, some good functionality right here. We've changed some, text. We've made that dynamic. We've made all these colors dynamic, all by, establishing the objects up here to refer to the specific elements in the HTML file. And then by putting some functionality in place to actually modify them based on other data that we have, which is coming from up here right now. So that's good. Now, let's do a couple. Let's see. I'll check and see what I want to do first. Let's add, because that's pretty and everything, but we can do better, right? So let's go and make I'll make sure I don't forget anything that's important to make this run. Okay. Yeah, we'll just do it right here. So actually, it doesn't matter. All right, so let's use this header. You can see up here we established this header, right? And we didn't do anything with it. Let's do something with it now. Let's make the header change color as well, depending on the theme, and it'll use one of those 5 colors. So let's say background color. Okay, we're going to set that equal to the current palette dot colors, and then this is somewhat arbitrary, but let's just say it's always going to be color 0. And I say somewhat arbitrary, but because I've already done this, I made sure that color 0 was always something that would be dark enough that the text would show up. Because if it's light, then you can't read anything. So yeah, I prepared that for you ahead of time, so it's not going to be an issue. Okay, and then we should see what happens. All right, check it out. Now our header changes to the same color that's at index 0 over here every single time we change it. Okay. Let's do even better because we still got some gray on this page. Okay. Let's go back up here. We have this little bonus, right? And do what did I call it? I haven't called it anything. That's the point, but I want to make sure it matches what I've got over here. Sorry, hang on. Oh yeah. So I should have looked at the index. Okay. I should have looked at my HTML because I already gave it a name. So this H3 right here, the color palette random generator that you see over here, that is the ID colored text. That's what I need. So I have to make it match that. So let's just, for the sake of simplicity, call it the same thing, only with camel case. And get colored text. Okay. And then down here, it is colored, right? ED. Yeah, it's an adjective. Let's do that. Then it's real consistent. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing here. Let's say colored text dot style. And then with text, the property is color, right? So we're going to change that property. And we'll say it's going to be current palette dot colors. And this time we'll use index 4, the last color. And again, I checked ahead of time and made sure that it was always going to be a color that is something that's readable against white. So let's do this. Aha! Now you can see that we have all these pretty colors showing up. So this is always the, index 4, and this one up here is always index 0. And it's real, it gives a lot of balance to the page, right? Makes it a lot more fun too. So the last thing, okay, no, not the last thing. We have 2 more things that we can do. You guys doing okay? Staying with me? Okay. All right. So we're going to say that we want to change the way that this button, we want to make it to where when you hover over this button, that the color changes there as well. Okay. So that's something that you can do just with CSS in general. But in order to, because we're doing this whole random thing and, make it where it's constantly changing to something different based on some data, we're going to, do this right here. And because we're studying the DOM, and so, as assignment 5 will tell you, do not mess with CSS. They want you to demonstrate that you know how to do this using the DOM. So we're going to need to establish one more thing. And that basically is that we need additional listeners, right? Because now we're talking about not click, but mouse over, right? So let's do it differently this time. Let's just use, this is very specific. So we're just gonna use an anonymous function and set it up inside our, go ahead and do that before I forget. Inside the event listener itself, instead of doing it separately like we did with change palette. And same thing, we're going to change the button style and its background color. Holy schmoly, okay. Then we'll change it to, let's go ahead and just make sure it's the same as the, yeah, the same as the text. We'll just do that. And then, well, let's test it. Let's just test it. All right. So right now, nothing happening, but once we click it, ooh, it's not happening. Now, why would that be? Sure, there's an excellent reason why, and I just haven't seen it yet. Mouse over.
I guess my question would be, are we trying to change it to a specific color? Would we need to use dot colors or?
Say that again?
For current palette.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, are we using dot colors?
Good cut. I was going too fast. Excellent. Yeah, exactly, because we have to actually access that array that is stored in that property. So good call. Okay. See? More than one head. Better. Okay. Yeah. So now when I mouse over, it changes. And that's fine, but I was kind of hoping for that, effect where it only changes when you mouse over. So we actually need a mouse out listener as well. So let's just copy that, and we're gonna call this mouse out. And then we're just gonna change it back to what it used to be. And you can check the CSS file, but it's just gray, that gray, 222, which is shorthand for 222222. When you're working with grays, it's real easy to do that. Or anything else that's just doubled up. The original 256 colors that we were only allowed to use back in the year 2000. Okay. Things were considerably more boring before we had access to 14 million colors, let me tell you. Okay, let's try this. Syntax error. Okay, now this told me that this is at line 89. Let's go find line 89. What did I do? Oh. It's not in quotes. It has to be a string, right? There we go. Now it's ready. Okay, so mouse over, mouse out, mouse over, mouse out. And we keep doing it. It's gonna keep changing. You'll notice though, if I stay over this and I just click and click and click and click, it doesn't update, right? Anybody tell me why?
Maybe I'm kind of thinking like it's similar with like HTML where it has to like store that variable or like be able to switch what stored variable it has for the color.
That's true. But remember that the DOM is event-based, right?
Yeah.
You didn't ever mouse out, so why would it update?
Exactly. Yeah. It's event-based. And so the only way it's going to change color is if I, mouse over or mouse out. I'm still on it. So at minimum, I have to mouse out. And then when I mouse back in, it changes to the color that actually matches this theme. See that? Like that. Okay. Yeah. So that's a very good way for you to kind of, demonstrates how events work. Changing everything on the page, these all changed because that was all just about clicking that button. I did that. So it did all those other things I told it to do when I click. But it didn't change the color here because that's not dependent on click. It's dependent on, and I could have made it dependent on click, and then, it would be a different story. It would change it before I mouse out, but it didn't. So let's see one more thing. This will come up again for assignment 5, and it'll be a lot more relevant when you're actually working with forms, because you're going to do a lot of validation, and then you'll need confirmation windows and alerts and things like that. But you already know how to do it. So let's go add a very silly alert. What do I want to do? Yeah, I'm just going to copy and paste it. Okay, so this is a pop-up alert, only if it's the very first time you click the button, okay? So the way that it knows that is if the name is currently an empty string, because remember when we initialize current palette, we set it to an empty string. That's the only time it's ever going to be equal to an empty string, is when the page first loads before that button is clicked. So that's how it knows the button has not been clicked. So we'll have a window alert that just says, let's get rid of this boring monochromatic look and add some pizzazz. Okay, because I had to come up with something. All right, so we're back to our boring page that does absolutely nothing. And I click on it, and before it changes anything, I get this alert that has my little message in it, and I say, okay, and then here we are. And now it goes ahead and moves forward. Okay. All right. Let's see. Is there anything else that I need to cover? Yeah, I guess the other thing I was going to demonstrate too is I talked earlier about how CSS, modern CSS, is not always the case. It used to be you had to pair a lot of JavaScript to get a lot of things done, but I can actually set some stuff here. First of all, you'll notice that I had to manually set that cursor pointer because in this browser on my machine, it stays that little arrow unless I make it change that little hand. So that's what that is, okay? It's me just saying, when you hover, make sure it changes the cursor. And I also set, 555 as an alternate gray so that it would, I have to refresh it, sorry. There we go. It would change, and that's just on CSS, right? Because we haven't actually set that into the DOM. I just did that right here based on the CSS. So that's the default that would have been there if I was not using the DOM. And this is a fun little thing, this transition. It's harder to see with that gray maybe, but you see how it's kind of slow? It comes in kind of slow. It makes a softer, it's not such a quick boom. It's much softer in and out. And that's, just a fun little thing that CSS comes with that built in now. You can do cool things like that very easily. And all you have to do is go online and Google it and find example and cut and paste. And then change your, change your timing or whatever. Okay. So I think, talked about that. Yeah, I think we talked about just about everything. Does anyone have any questions? This is important. I want to know if there's anything I can help you with further before we finish.
I guess a quick overview about the init function, or not with a function, but just init in general. Because with my assignment, I don't think I utilized that inside my.
It's optional.
Yeah, I guess it looks a lot neater just seeing it kind of that way, of like having the window just handle listening for the loading of the page, and then
Right.
having that handle the rest of the functionality. It just made me think about just like the layout of it is interesting. And just,
anytime one function starts to get too big, it's time to break it out. So yeah, that's actually the thought behind this, because we've got a lot going on here, right? And a lot of levels of indentation already. So if we were to put all of that inside here, instead of using calling it out from a function separately, it would just, it would make this a monster. So, and then of course, as I mentioned, once you start doing fetching JSON, if you want to make sure that this doesn't happen until after that data comes in, you really have to put this inside the fetch as the last thing that it does. And so you would not want all of this because fetch is like super indented because we've got all kinds of nested stuff. So yeah, so this just makes it easy to have it separate out. These are all the things that the DOM actually controls that we want to happen once we're sure that the page has loaded and all of our data has loaded. Yeah. Which right now is like near instantaneous because it's all right here.
Cool.
Yeah, does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Any more questions? And also, is there anything while we were working on this that you thought, hey, that would be cool? What if you did this? Because ideas are good. Do you guys have any ideas?
Were we going to be showing the hex codes for these, I thought, under the boxes or something? Or did I misunderstand that earlier?
Thank you. You're absolutely correct. I forgot to add that in. See, someone read the instructions. It always helps to read the instructions. Okay, yes, absolutely. So I need to do that. Let's see. So we want to make sure that, yeah. So what I did is I put this in and I had it change the color blocks, but I forgot to do the second part of that, which was the code blocks. Absolutely. We'll do that in the right order. There we go. Okay, now it should go grab that text for that HTML. I'm sorry, for the hex codes, and it should assign it to the code blocks that are in the 5 that are stored in that array. Okay, let's do it. And it's not there. What's going on? Okay, code blocks is not defined.
Yeah, I think it's color block or color codes rather.
It is. I almost did that before too. See, it pays to actually use the correct name. Okay. Thank you. And it's still not working. All right, what's going on? Color code style. Oh, because I changed the. It's not style. It's the inner HTML, right? I actually need to change the text. Okay. Oh man, I didn't get enough sleep last night, y'all. All right. There we go. There it is. All right. Yeah. So, yeah. So thank you for noticing that. You're absolutely right. That was something we were supposed to do from the beginning. And you know, if we had more time, then we could get into you know, do something fancy, like, you know, actually having a display in the middle of the thing. But then you have to worry about the whole light and dark thing. And like I said, that's a lot more complicated than we're going to get into. So this works, you know, it makes it real handy. And you got everything right there. Something else I could do if I wanted to is I could actually force those to be uppercase, right? So I mean, you use all the same JavaScript stuff, just like you always do. It's just, you know, you're using these special properties that belong to the DOM when you make objects out of these things. So you're taking a lot of things that you've already learned and just, you know, integrating them with the DOM methodology. So yeah, does that make sense? Okay, any more questions?
Not about this. I think with it being colors and everything and just so visible, it made it pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, very visual. Yeah, you immediately see the changes. Oh, by the way, because I never took back out that CSS, it's overriding our functionality. You see that? And that was on purpose because I only did that for the sake of just showing you. But I'm gonna actually, I'll leave it in there. I'll just comment it out like I did before. I'll probably put a note in it before I save this for you guys. Yeah, so now if I go back and do it, yeah, there it is. You got it. So, all right, well, that is it. I am going to make sure I'm gonna get the video processed. I'm going to I should, hey, commit this. I should have done like probably more than one commit as we were doing this, but that's okay. Let's check the status. All right, we have to see what we're doing. Yeah, the JS file is the only one ultimately that changed. The reason for that is because even though we changed stuff in here, we changed it back and it's identical to the way it was to begin with. So Git recognizes that it doesn't actually have any changes from the way it was before. The script file is the only one that does. So we're gonna add that and then we're gonna commit it. Okay, and now we're good. So, and we check our branches. I've got that branch, this branch, and I'm gonna go ahead and just push it. Since we already pushed it once and set the origin, I don't have to say that again, I can just push it. And now if I go to my, I'm gonna pull it over. If I go to my, yeah, you can see here, I've got, you know, 4 branches. And you can also see that I've got, that's interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we go to the live session, and it shows that there's 8 commits associated with it. So you can, you know, you can always go onto GitHub, and these codes over here, by the way, refer to specific commits. If you ever needed to be able to get back to a commit, this is how you would know which one locally to tell your machine to get back to. And that's a whole nother lesson for another day. But yes, so I've got everything up there. I'm gonna finalize this. I'll make sure that the solution and starter code match up with where we left off. And I will get everything added over into this document down here. And it will be available for everyone. And then next weekend, we will do part 2 and incorporate everything that is going to be covered this week. Okay. All right, I'm going to